The huge tyrant attacked and William as it raised its arms and tried to crush the man, who in turn easily dodged it by throwing himself backwards. The entire ground shook from the force of the attack, the concrete beneath its feet cracking. William stared at the creature with uncertain curiosity. "I'll take care of the others. I'll deal with this one," he said to his men, who was standing next to his fallen companion, to see if he was even alive. William didn't wait for an answer. He just focused attention on the tyrant who ran towards him and tried to kick him. William dodged again and jumped forward, sliding under the tyrant's legs, while applying the explosive gel to its legs. The tyrant spun around quickly, flailing its arms in an attempt to grab the man, who simply dodged again by jumping over the creature's arms and driving its machete into the thing's tough skin. On top of the tyrant's arm, William smeared the explosive gel all over as he ran towards the shoulder of the tyrant, which he tried to grab him with his other arm. Jumping over the creature's head, William stuck a C4 onto the side of the tyrant's neck, kicking the creature in the face as he jumped back. William took a few calm steps back and squeezed the detonator on both the explosive gel and the C4. A huge chain explosion engulfed by the tyrant's body in smoke and fire, hurtling towards the huge creature towards the container next to it, sending it crashing through the metal. A large cloud of smoke took over where the tyrant had once stood, and William just continued to stare at the scene with neutral eyes. It didn't matter if it was a new variant or something else. In the end, biological weapons were the same thing. They could be injured and die like any other life. Being a little stronger or a little more resistant didn't change much. They still had a weakness. There was still a limit to the sick games that were still being played with those viruses. William watched inexpressively as the tyrant's huge and rested on the shoulder side of the container, pulling its huge body forward. The creature's black clothes fell to the ground with a deafening thud, its muscles growing exponentially as well as its height, causing the concrete beneath its feet to crack due to its increased weight. Unlike other tyrants, this one didn't have claws in its hands, bones in its neck, or super strong tentacles. Even it did have the usual weakness, such as an exposed heart or an amphibian brain. Apparently, that variant was created with such weakness in mind, in an attempt to circumvent of what happened. What a shame! A creature without an exposed weakness was dangerous not only to outsiders, but to those who created it too. The huge tyrant grabbed the sides of the container and lifted into the air. William turned quickly and ran to the center of the site. Looking over his shoulder, William jumped to the side, going to do a dozen few meters away from the object that bounced a few times and destroyed what looked like a supercomputer. The wiring in the room seemed to have short-circuited. It seemed that the container had destroyed something other than more than just a computer. The lights flickered and the platform below where the supercomputer stood began to shake. His eyes soon focused on the tyrant, which was running towards him recklessly, rather fast for something that size. He quickly removed the platform, catching a glimpse of the tyrant appearing in such a pungent direction. William leapt forward and spun his body around while still in the air and shot the tyrant in the head, only to make the creature even angrier. The tyrant tried to kick William, who dodged it by throwing his torso to the side. Still in the momentum of its movement, the tyrant turned its body and tried to punch the man in the back of its huge hand. William was quicker and dodged as he fell to the ground. Getting up quickly, he took a few steps back while firing at the tyrant. The huge giant raised both its arms above the head to crush William, only to brace itself and its hand near the side of his waist. Running towards the tyrant, he jumped in moments before the creature hit the ground with its blow. The platform they were on gave away. He quickly grabbed onto the creature's back, and they fell both themselves, free-falling from the laboratory. William held on tightly to the creature's back as he raised in the hook shot supports. Still in the air, he shot the hook shot and let himself hang there for a while as he watched the tyrant crash into the concrete below. The tyrant stood up slightly bent over, apparently irritated by their little fight. William began to descend slowly, pleased to see the tyrant start to run in a particular direction and gunshots being heard. Although the world had belonged to them, the problem with human beings is that they were too fragile. well-paced punch, a virus so small it was almost invisible, and a fall from the considerable height. Landing softly on the ground, he observed the small scene of destruction ahead. The Umbrella soldiers probably didn't expect the tyrant to destroy the platform and appear there. They were counting on either killing the tyrant or the tyrant killing him. Either way, this was the flaw of their plans, cost them more miserable lives. The tyrant would make a good distraction. Following the destroyed corridor, William had turned left, leaving the small trail of destruction and calmly walking down the laboratory corridor. The door ahead at the end of the corridor opened and some Umbrella soldiers ran forward to him. William fired first, his reflexes once again proving superior to those close of a human being. He too hit the soldiers until he was forced to take cover in an adjoining room. There was a blood-stained stretcher in the room, some medical utensils, and a medium-sized bottle on the table next to it, which was empty. Picking up the grenade, he holds the pin for a few moments, his mind precisely calculating the success tactics of the movie, and throws it down on the corridor with some force. Strong but fast enough for the soldiers not to recognize that what it was, precise enough for the grenades to explode in the center of the small group, hitting everyone with the blast. He quickly left the room and eliminated the soldiers as soon as possible and passed through the door behind him. With calm steps, he descended the long staircase and ahead of another down corridor, ignoring the rooms with subjects in cryo-tanks and glass tanks. At this point, if his team were still alive, they would have to make sure to destroy the place. When he reached the research room, he ran his eyes quickly around the place. There were a few computers around a tank in the center of the room, and there was a test subject for yet another sick experiment. The subject's body had just black skin with bruises all over with reddish veins, and its fingertips were black tentacles. He had no idea what it was, but it didn't matter if it wasn't alive yet, since there were vital signs on the computer that were static, and he would make sure it didn't come to life. Turning his head to the side, he stared coldly at the scientist, who didn't have managed to escape in time. They were all cowering in the corner of the room, probably not expecting him to get that far. One of the scientists slowly stood up while raising his hand in surrender when he realized that William was staring at him. "Please, we're only trying to improve the quality of human life," the scientist said, and still with an expressionless face, he stared at the subject inside the glass tank in front of him. "Improve the quality of life, huh? 2 major cities were being attacked by this very moment, civilians being executed, beheaded, killed by biological weapons. Was that the idea of quality of life?" William simply sighed and raised his rifle, unloading his magazine into the scientist without mercy, shooting him even after they were just dead, just to make sure they didn't get up. He stopped when he only ran out of bullets. After reloading, his instincts screamed, he leapt to the side at great speed, turning and raising his rifle to his attacker. Glancing over, he saw a knife sticking to the wall. "The resemblance to Albert is striking," he heard one of the soldiers say in front. The unit was different, perhaps a special unit. There were 2 men and a woman, and they wore thick black military outfits, similar to Hunk's. "He's a slower. He doesn't have the same skills," the only woman in the group said, and William turned to them with his face still inexpressive. "Where's Albert?" William asked. "He's not here, if you haven't noticed," one of the men said. The mask he was wearing only covered only half of his face was still white with red details, similar to the woman's mask, which was black. "Stop wasting my time and tell me where he is, otherwise you'll die here," he said impatiently, but with a neutral tone of voice. "Don't get too cocky, you idiot. Albert says you're a failure," the woman said, starting to walk away slowly to her right, while the man in white mask slowly walked to the left, and the last one with the red mask simply covered his face and stood still, facing him. William sighed at this and quickly moved towards the man with the white mask. He may not be able to literally teleport like his brother, but he could move so fast that it was difficult for human eyes to follow. William tried to kick to the man's leg, which he dodged by jumping back up and trying to raise his rifle, but his arms were being grabbed by William, who quickly threw the man aside when he heard the woman moving towards him, throwing the soldier towards her. The man in a full mask fired in his direction, and William ran to the left. The soldier ceased his fire as William moved behind the glass tank, still holding the dead subject. The woman quickly ran towards William, running along the flat surface of the wall and leaping towards the man, who raised his rifle and shot at her. But he wasn't quick enough to fire, as he could only shift his torso to the side and watching expressively as the woman kicked the rifle out of his hands. He advanced towards the woman, who tried to stab him in the neck. However, he simply grabbed the woman's arm, ignoring her strength, and punched her in the face, followed by a kick to the side of the torso. Before he could do anything else, a hail of gunfire came this way, and he jumped backwards, making a quick and agile swings until he was so close to the man in the red mask. The man shot him as he approached, but William quickly grabbed his fist and kicked the other soldier's gun away. The soldier turned in his body and tried to kick William, who dodged and countered it with a punch to the ribs. However, the soldier sidestepped by turning his body again and tried to elbow the William's face, who just held the man's arm, pushing his arm down after soon countering with a hook to the chin. However, the soldier simply grabbed his fist as they both stared at each other for a few moments. That man's strength was not of the human. It explained why Umbrella had agreed to join forces with Wesker. "You see, you're not the only problem with..." William interrupted him by landing a kick to the side of the man's leg, followed by a kick to the chest that sent him reeling backwards. Turning, he grabbed the pistol and fired at the woman with another masked man, forcing them to retreat. "So that's what my brother proposed? You defeated him with your lives." William sidestepped, watching the woman advance towards him with superhuman speed. However, it didn't matter that they were super soldiers. He could see their movements, predict their actions. He dodged a blow from the woman by crouching down and sidestepping quickly forward. Quickly, he punched her in the stomach and froze her towards the man in the white mask. "What did he say to you, huh?" he asked, dodging a punch from the man in the red mask. Then he counterattacked with a kick, which the soldier dodged by stepping to the side. However, moving quickly to the side, William landed a punch to the side of the soldier's torso, causing him to bend down in pain. Then he grabbed him by the neck and threw him to the ground, kicking him in the stomach shortly afterwards, with such force that the man was dragged a few meters to the ground. Did he promise that you would stay with him when his plan came to life? Or did he say that you would be a part of a society of superhumans that will create together? You will be kings and queens? He asked again, shooting at the white masked soldier in hand and advancing towards him, striking an open-handed blow to the chest, causing all the air of the soldier's lungs to be expelled. With force, he was thrown to the ground on the wall. His body crashed hard against the sturdy concrete. "I don't know if you're stupid or just naive. Do you really think he would leave you alive? Do you think Umbrella would be a part of Wesker's project? Is that supposed to be a joke?" William asked, watching as the white masked soldier advanced towards him with a machete. William quickly stepped forward to the side and landed a kick to the soldier's stomach, still while in the air, causing the soldier to be thrown backwards towards the wall. Turning, he dodged a blow from the red masked soldier, leaning against his torso backwards. Quickly, he grabs the soldier by the back of the head, preventing him from running away. His hands and two powerful punches to the face, breaking his nose and knocking out some teeth for sure. Blood dripped down the man's neck and mask. Kicking the soldier's legs, William grabs his head and breaks his neck with a strong sideways movement, crushing part of the skull in the process. The woman screamed as she jumped towards him. William turned and punched the woman in the face, followed by a blow to the chin, and finally a kick, sending the woman crashing down to the ground. Before he could fall, he grabbed one of the woman's legs and pulled her towards him, stomping hard on her head and exploding her skull. Turning, he picked up his machete and threw it towards the last soldier, who had gotten up, only to have his skull pierced by the silver blade. William walked over to the soldier's body, shooting at the tank containing the dead subject as he passed from it. He then grabbed his machete back at the same time as the corpse of the experiment fell to the ground. His tentacles filled around frantically until they remained motionless. "What a waste of time," he muttered to himself. William reloaded his rifle and pistol. Just before walking towards the elevator ahead, He activated his EMP suit, watching the elevator lights go on, and as he entered, he allowed himself to be led to the lower floor. As soon as the elevator doors popped open, he focused his eyes on his brother's back in front of him. The room wasn't that big, but there were a few empty tanks on the sides, some of the computers scattered left and from right, forming a wide corridor ahead. Facing the elevator was a supercomputer with a giant screen. In front of it, monitoring the creation of the sample of something, perhaps a cure for Albert, perhaps a completion of the virus. William's pretty much footsteps drew the attention of his brother, who didn't even acknowledge that he was there. "So they're lost." That's what he said after a few moments of silence. Albert was wearing a black overcoat with a knitted tactical shirt and pants in the same color. His boots were also black. "They would have stopped me?" William asked, reflecting his arrogance so present in his brother's character. "I admit I underestimated you. A mistake I don't plan to make again," Albert said, turning to face his brother. Despite the glasses, they could both see each other's eyes. They could see that predatory blue against that fervent red. "You managed to manipulate them well. They defended you with their miserable lives. It was interesting to hear them talk, to hear what it's reflected you, or other words, lose your mouths, as your ignorance and inferior being me a failure," William said, keeping his face expressionless, but the mockery present in his voice. "How does it feel, brother, knowing that this failure has stood up between you and your plans for years? Knowing that this failure, that I'm created an organization that surpassed yours? Knowing that I created human soldiers you can only imagine reaching," William teased, letting down his own feelings come out, hidden away that is, your brothers didn't perceive. "I've managed to do what you so desperately want. I dare say I went further. What would be Spencer's face look if he didn't see that soldiers that I created exceeded you?" Albert snorted in deliberation. "That old man's opinion matters to me, and I didn't know you became a comedian, William. No matter how skilled your soldiers are, they're only human. Creatures interfere with the greatness of my blood offers," Albert replied, and William sighed. "Surpass me? What a joke. Neither way nor you have any idea what I'm capable of, what my abilities. They mean to get these mediocre creatures? Next to what I am, your soldiers are insignificant." "Really? Forgive my lack of memory, but as far as I know, it was my soldier that poisoned you, wasn't it? It was my soldier who infuriated and destroyed your precious ship. It was my soldiers who put an end to many of your plans and delayed your goals by years. It is the same inferior as those beings who were destroying the laboratory at this very moment. It was very these significant creatures who almost ended the name of Albert Wesker," William said, snapping his bones in his fingers. He knew that guns wouldn't be much help in this fight. Both he and his brother were skilled enough to dodge bullets. It was nothing more than a nuisance, so he just tossed his rifle aside, leaving only his pistol and machete. "Really? I don't understand why you allied yourself with them. Despite the disgust, you still have Wesker blood in your veins. All the potential you have, wasted on this species that is getting closer to extinction every day. They're rotten, filthy. We would have created better species, superior in every way. Once again, William, you've proved to me nothing but disappointment," Albert said, and William advanced towards him. Albert dodges the attack and aimed at his stomach and practically teleporting to the side. He quickly counterattacks with William's kick to his head, which deflects by throwing his torso backwards, and then counterattacks by turning his body and attempting to kick his brother's chest. However, Albert dodges by teleporting right in front of William, hitting him with the most powerful punch to the face that sends him hurtling towards the room, dragging him along the floor. Albert leaps high into the air and dives towards his brother, who simply rolls to the side and gets up quickly, watching the concrete below while Albert's knee break. Albert then teleports himself in front of William, landing a punch to his face, followed by a kick to the stomach. William then tries another punch, but Albert recovers quickly and grabs his brother's fist, countering with a punch to Albert's stomach. Albert teleports behind William, hitting him with an elbow in the back, sending the man a few steps forward, then teleports in front of his brother and grabs him by the neck. Turning his body with the momentum of his movement, Albert lands a kick to William's stomach, whom is thrown back a few meters. Without waiting, Albert teleports once again. However, William was getting used to this fighting style, and he quickly jumped up and turned his body while still in the air and landed a powerful kick to his brother's face, who was thrown a few meters to the side. Albert recovered while still in midair and spun his body, doing a few backflips until he had recovered completely. He stared at his body with cold eyes, wiping away the trickle of blood running down the side of his mouth. "For superior being, I think you're the disappointment," William teased, and Albert said nothing, only attacked him in surprise. William dodged by stepping to the side, trying to attack Albert with his machete. However, Albert not blocked the attack with the side of his forearm and countered it with a punch to the stomach, followed by an open palm strike to the chin, and finishing up by grabbing William's neck and throwing him to the ground. "A disgrace says like you have no right to." Albert was interrupted when William landed a blow with his both arms and his elbow, causing the grip to weaken, and then landed a powerful punch headbutt to Albert's face, knocking his brother away shortly afterwards. Getting up quickly, William advanced on Albert and tried the vertical cut. However, Albert dodged by ducking down, countering with a hook to William's chin, who grunted in pain but felt himself blow recover quickly. William spun his body around and landed a kick to Albert's stomach, which bent from the blow. He quickly grabbed his brother's head and threw him hard against the computers next to him, once, twice, until blood began dripping from his head. Albert grunted angrily and elbowed William, who let go. Turning his body and he kicked his brother's leg. He leapt into the air and landed a heavy elbow on his head, sending him to the ground, stomping his head a few times until small spots of blood spread across the concrete. Raising his leg again, Albert grunts as he felt William grab him. Stopping his attack, William then kicked his brother in the other leg, who grunted again and then turned his body while still in air, forcing William to let go. Both men stood there at the same time and advanced on each other. Albert punched William in the face, grabbed him by the shoulders now and threw him to the side. William grunted as he felt his body let go and break through the computers, his back hurt hitting the sturdy metal of the wall. William recovered, his eyes widened slightly as he saw Albert's first approach his face. He dodged it by throwing his torso to the side. Albert first connected with the wall, and William quickly grabbed his brother by the neck and threw him against the wall, causing Albert to grunt loudly by the force imposed. Quickly, William turned his body, while still crouching slightly, and landed a powerful kick to his brother's chin, sending Albert flying backwards. William lunged at Albert, who then felt his body fall to the ground, but soon recovered and dodged his brother's blow, countering a punch to the stomach, followed by a hook to the chin. William recovered quickly and landed a punch to his brother's chest, then grabbed Albert by the head, throwing him to the ground, where he had landed another punch before his brother grabbed him in his arm and rolled to the side, reversing the positions. Albert viciously began punching William in the face. Both men's glasses had long since shattered. Their animalistic eyes stared at each other with ferocity, neither giving in to each other. Up at one point, William grabbed his brother's fist and punched him in the face. He then raised his lower body and pulled Albert off of him, finishing with a kick to the chest, just before he stood up. As he stood up, they were both taken by surprise when the laboratory shook. The lights in the room turned red, and the large screen in front of him began beep a warning. Whatever sample Albert had been producing had just been cancelled. They were both panting, and after looking at the screen with certain disgust, Albert faced his brother with an irritated, angry, slightly confused look. "It seems that those in fear being disrupted by your plans once again," Albert growled angrily and lunged at his brother, landing a powerful kick to his chest that sent him crashing into the wall again. William gasped sharply as he felt the air being expelled from his lungs. However, he quickly grabbed the two of his heavy grenades and threw them towards Albert, who teleported in front of him. Albert grabbed his brother by the neck, who grunted as he felt himself being lifted into the air. the eyes staring deep into Albert's, and he could see black veins slowly spreading around his eyes, staining his white skin, who also stained with blood. "The poison hasn't healed yet, huh?" he said, with mild defiance, knowing that his brother was weak at the moment. Not that it made much difference, and during those years, he had strengthened himself with the blood energized with the G-virus characteristics. He could go on fighting for hours. He could go and feel his body slowly regenerating, and he'd be the only agent to thank for that. "You have no idea what you're doing." In response, William just squeezed the detonator of the explosive gel and placed it behind Albert's back, who grunted in annoyance and surprise as he was thrown forward, crashing into the wall. The grenades William had also thrown exploded. The whole laboratory seemed to shake. The alarm surrounded the screen changed to a warning. The lab had suffered considerable damage, both from his team and from the tyrant who had left running around. The place shook again, and William raised his pistol, firing at Albert, who dodged the shots with surreal skills and speed, to retreat into the opposite corner of the room. William quickly moved in, ignoring the fact that Albert had turned on the lab's self-destruct system. It didn't matter if he died there, as long as he managed to take Albert with him. Hell, he didn't even care as long as he didn't hurt him enough. Ghost and Hunk wouldn't be able to finish what he couldn't. The laboratory went into self-destruct. This included the missiles preparing to launch the virus and the complete interruption of the finalization of that same virus. Even if Albert survived, he would be alive in hiding, running from the place to place in search of continuing for plans. Albert could do more, but he didn't. He lost. The only problem was that he would surely cause some more tragedy in the world, but his fate would be sealed. He made a point of sending messages to his ancients before chasing his brother out of the laboratory. Ghost sighed slightly as he ran his hand along the slightly torn mask. His eyes very well scanned his body. His clothes were stained with blood, his own, of that of the other creatures. His ammunition had ran out, as his grenades. All he knows was his trusty knife, and he was pretty sure he could damage with just one case if any more worms showed up for him to play with. He raised his head and he saw the helicopter approaching the sky. The ancient remained seated as he watched Mike descend a few meters away, and then he stood up, walking on the ground, both without their heads, their bodies serving as seats for the agent, who was just waiting patiently for him. Ghost climbed onto the helicopter and picked up the headset, sitting down on the back of the helicopter with a tired sigh. "You all right, sir?" Mike asked into the microphone, and Ghost grunted slightly as he took off his tactical vest. He had to take care of those injuries. Nothing too serious. It was too tired and slight irritation that bothered him. Of course he had lost his lunch. "Yes, everything's fine. What's the situation with the civilians?" Ghost asked, picking up one of the first aid kits from the side of the helicopter and sitting down. "There is an hour flight from here in Philadelphia. USSOCOM has provided the medical support, temporarily housing supplies for the survivors. They'll be fine," Mike explained, and Ghost sighed slightly as he sprayed his wounds with first aid spray, beginning to cover them up with bandages soon after. "Redfield, come in," he said over the radio, watching the message notification on the screen of his duty watch. It was William. "Ghost, how's your situation?" Chris asked, and Ghost could only hear the noise from the tank he was in. There was no gunfire, but they were probably moving into some other area of the city. "I finished all things here. The civilians managed to escape in the helicopters, at least the ones that could. Were you able to escort the others?" he asked, leaning his head on the metal wall. "We're escorting them at one point. We estimated there were around 500 civilians and 11 wounded soldiers. The army will send some helicopters when we get to the rescue site," Chris explained, and Ghost leaned forward and rested his arms on his legs, feeling the pains from his injuries within lessen each time. "Do you need anything? I can make 1 or 2 helicopters available for you. Medical supplies, food, or whatever." "I appreciate that, but you don't need it. The army athletes have already got help, and I've already received messages asking without an agent an unidentified helicopter in the area. Apparently you've attracted a lot of attention today," Chris said, and Ghost sighed. He imagined that what would happen if he saw his news crew. Yeah, well, it was inevitable. I should have destroyed that camera, he said over the radio. Removing his mask and taking a few steps, he ran his hand across his forehead, wiping away some of the sweat, and tossed the mask aside. He couldn't wait for a shower. I don't think it would make much of a difference. The testimony of the civilians would be enough to go back with a video with you in the airport. There's already plenty of testimonies out of asked the masked man saving people. By the way, did you really think you could really remain unknown for decades? Chris asked, and Ghost snorted in a nasal laughter. If Albert hadn't attacked his organization, yes, he was sure the rumors would be nothing more than rumors, with no concentrated proof. But, well, it couldn't get in the way. It didn't change anything. It was that kind of nuisance. I'm going to my hideout. Send me your location when you're done there, Ghost said. Understood, thanks, Ghost. Chris thanked him, and they ended the call. Ghost crossed his arms and lowered his head. After a few moments, he opened his eyes again, and repeated the technique until he reached the hiding place. This technique, in which most closes his eyes, it falls into a deep sleep, lasts between seconds and minutes. It's known as the microsleep, and he uses it while he's on a mission or needs to recover more quickly. It's not recommended to use this technique often, but it helps in times like these. When the helicopter arrived at the hideout on the small island, practically unset, just with one bunker and a small helicopter parking lot, he got off at the entrance hideout, waving to Mike after getting off. He entered the hideout and took the elevator down the bunker. The door is open in a small room, the kind of makeshift office once the stove is in corner. Sir, he heard one of his men greet him, and he greeted them back, pleased them to see them well. He went down some stairs until he reached that wing that served as a laboratory, monitoring room, and meeting room. Upstairs wasn't that big, and the downstairs was medium-sized, with a satisfactory-sized training room. Aliyah, he greeted the woman, sitting in front of some monitors. She turned around and smiled in his direction. Sir, it's good to see you in the flesh, Aliyah said. A Ghost watched the monitors for a few moments. What's the damage? The woman sighed and turned around again. Disastrous, but it's not as disastrous as it could have been. Millions of people have died or are missing so far. The government has managed to rescue around almost 500,000 civilians, apart from the others who had not yet to be registered. It's too early to tell the real extent of the tragedy, but it's not good, Aliyah said, and Ghost sighed. Millions of lives lost. He just wanted to make Umbrella, to make Albert feel like the weight of those lives in their last moments. But he knew it was impossible, so he'd have to be content to watch them burn and drown in despair. That's great, I'll talk to you later, Aliyah. Thank you so much, he said, waving to her and walking towards his quarters. His room was very similar to the one in the main hideout. Very simple. A bed, a closet, a table with a chair and a lamp. In the right corner, there was a door leading to the bathroom. Simple military style. He preferred it that way. He removed his blood and sweat-stained clothes in the bathroom and entered before grabbing a towel. He let the cold water wash over his body with his head down. He stared at the drain. It felt so strange. His sentences contained a hint of arrogance, and he was cocky, no longer than his usually strict professional tone. The cold water had long since stopped being now chilled skin. That was his fault. He let himself get closer, but what bothered him wasn't that. It wasn't the arrogant that he was talking too much, or that his feelings that he shouldn't be feeling. No, a part of him was short that in time. What bothered him was that part he wanted to carry on like that. Part of him wanted to carry on the arrogance. A part of him wanted to feel what others felt. Part of him wanted to say what he felt. Makes jokes being normal. He shook his head with a sigh and left the bathroom. He then puts on his clothes. He looked attentively at the door when he heard someone knocking. Ghost, it's me, Walter. The agent sighed with a certain relief when he heard the doctor's knock. Come in, he said, putting on his blouse and sitting down on his bed. Good to see you again, Ghost, the doctor said, and the agent gave a small smile. It's good to know you're all right, Walter. I hope I didn't push you yourself too hard by taking care of things here, Walter snorted. Nah, it's my day incredibly compared to yours. How are you doing, by the way? Do you need any medical attention? Ghost shook his head. No thanks, Walter. No injuries that are just herbs and bandages won't fix. Good then. I just came to see how you were. I wish Hunk was here too, but... Ghost shook his head, kneeling down on his bed. He's busy, but he should be here soon. I was just about to contact him. William sent him a message. Then I won't bother you anymore. As I said, I just came back to check on you. Good to see that you're okay, Walter said, and walked towards the slightly open door. No problem. That's a lot. Thanks a lot, Walter. I'll update you on things later, Ghost said, waving to Walter just before he left the room.